Hi, my name is Kimberly from Zeeman Development. Today I'm going to give you a demonstration of Audit Trail Cloud, our tool for tracking changes across your Razor's Edge database, wherever they might be made. So let's get started by making some changes. We're going to start by making some changes in Database View. First of all, we're going to go to the Address tab. We're going to delete an address here. Then we're going to go to the Gift tab, and we're going to make a couple of changes to this gift here. We're going to change the subtype to online donation, and we're going to change the fund to our annual fund. So let's save and close that. And now let's go to Web View and make some changes here. So we're going to add an online presence. We're going to make a change to the constituent's name. And we're going to delete one of his solicit codes as well. Okay, so now we've made those changes, let's go to our Audit Trail Cloud viewer. So once we log into our Audit Trail Cloud viewer, this is what we'll see. We've got the filter options and we've got the grid of all the changes that have been made. So just to talk you through the filter options, we can search by date. So we can search on a specific date, between dates, before or after a date. So we can make sure we're looking at changes made in a specific time period. We can filter by area, and then within area, we can filter by a specific field as well. And we can also filter on the type of change that was made. So either an addition, a change, or a deletion. And we can use all of these fields in combination with one another, as well as looking for changes made to records for a specific user. So we can search for any of our constituents within Razor's Edge. And we can also look for changes made by a specific person as well. So we can just look at my changes, we could just look at any of our users' changes, and that's really helpful when we've got new staff or if we're doing some training. So once you've determined the types of records you want to look at, then if we click search, we can use that filter, or if we click reset, we can bring in all of our new changes. Okay, so let's take a look at the changes that we made. So just to talk through the grid here, we can see we've got the change ID, which are all the changes that are made before we hit save. We've got the constituent ID, the type of action it is, so a deletion, a change, or an addition, the area, the field that was changed, the date and time it was changed, who it was changed by, if it's available, the old value, the new value, if it's an addition or a change, and the constituent name, which is a link that we can open up their record in Razor's Edge. So we can see here the solicit code that we deleted. We can see the name that was changed from Ronald to Ronnie, and that's obviously changed our full name as well. We can see the online presence that we added. We can see the changes we made to the gift in Database View. And we can see the address we deleted as well. So we can also make some changes here, and we can undo erroneous errors. So if we click on the name change, for example, if we scroll right down to the bottom and say revert, then that will allow us to undo that change we just made. If we then scroll up to the top, we can see we've got a little reverted button here that shows us that we've changed that. And if we open this record back up again, he should be back to being Ronald, which we can see he is there. We can also do this in combination with any number of fields as well. So we could select multiple fields and undo them. We could also download this entire table if we wanted to make multiple changes and then import it back into Razor's Edge using Importacular as well. In addition to using the Audit Trail Cloud viewer, we can see changes directly in the constituent record on NXT using our Audit Trail Cloud tile. And this will show you very similar fields to what we can see in the viewer, but it will allow you to see it for a particular constituent. And we can see the type of action and we can filter on that. We can also see old and new values, the person who made the change, and the date and time. In addition to this overview tile, we've also got tiles on the gift record. So we can see changes to this specific gift on that GIF record. And we can see the same information on the action record. And you'll see all of those listed here. I'm now going to hand over to Christine, who's our Razor's Edge expert, for some use cases and to talk a bit more about the benefits your organisation can get from using Audit Trail Cloud.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me join you on today's webinar. So as already said, my name is Christine. I am with Zeidman. And prior to my role here at Zeidman, I worked first as a Razor's Edge database manager and second as a Razor's Edge database consultant. As part of my role here with Zeidman, I do Razor's Edge consulting. And so when we first started talking about this webinar and talking about showing people how to use Audit Trail Cloud, one of the things that I was really excited about was thinking of all of the problems I've seen in Razor's Edge databases that I was limited in fixing because I couldn't retrace the history. So, for example, a couple of things I want to show you how I see Audit Trail fixing that. Things like data that's been overwritten, things like code table merges that remove history of who had a code table entry previously, and also fixing an import mistake. So some of those things you can still figure out and do in Razor's Edge, but some of them become really complicated because we can't actually tell when they were changed or what the value was before. So I know you've already seen and heard so many of those things. I want to break it down a little bit more practically and show you how I see this happening, but also how I can see using Audit Trail Cloud to fix it. So we're going to go ahead and start with something as simple as a code table fix. So I'm going to make a fix that's wrong. So let's go ahead and we're going to go to our configuration here. We are starting out in an odd place. We're in Razor's Edge 7, which is a bit odd for a tool that I know has a web view, but we're going to use the database view for a couple things, and then we're going to flip over to NXT's web view and also working with Audit Trail Cloud itself. So we're going to actually come to the fields. And one thing that I'm going to do is we're going to work through this with cleaning up a code table. So I'm actually clicking not T fields, I'm clicking on tables. Sorry, my misclick there. And we're going to go down to our titles. So I'm going to take my messy little table here and I'm going to do a bit of cleanup. So let's go ahead and let's merge together a doctor without the period to a doctor with the period. Now, I totally understand that which of those is correct depends completely on which country you're in. So forgive me if I'm fixing this in the wrong direction for you, but the principle will still stand. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to merge those. That's pretty good. Let's also do another one, but this time, for the sake of the example, we are going to put Ms. And let's come down a bit further and let's add Ms. And just for the sake of showing you how we can fix a mistake, let's make a pretty big one. I am going to make all of our Ms. records now say Mrs. Obviously, this is not what you want to do in real life. So this is just the example of a mistake. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And as you know, if you've been working in Razor's Edge for any amount of time, we no longer have anyone coded as Ms. in our database, and we have no way in Razor's Edge to know who I just changed. So if you're working without Audit Trail Cloud, you're going to have a hard time figuring it out. You may have to pull queries of who's married, who's not. You still may not be able to find preferences. But with Audit Trail Cloud, we can come and we can say, let's find a change made today, because I know I just did it. Now, if I didn't do it today, of course, you'd have to look differently. Let's go ahead and limit it a bit further. Let's click on constituent and let's just work with that title. And let's skip our adds and deletes. Let's just look at our changes. So let's go ahead and click on search for that. So you can now see on our screen, we have filtered our changes and we've got our constituent IDs, we've got our changes and our titles, and we can actually see now what the old value was versus what the new value is. So one thing you could do with this to go back and fix it would be to come down to the bottom. We can click download visible. If we know that that's all we've changed, we might need to change that and get a few more records in there to make sure we capture everyone. But we can use the download function. We can create an Excel file, and you can import back into Razor's Edge that Ms. value rather than Mrs. So you can format it if you want the period or if you don't. But that's a quick way for you to be able to go back, find those things that were mistakenly done with a code table fix, and use Audit Trail Cloud to correct Razor's Edge. Another thing that I often saw when I was Razor's Edge consulting were issues with people using an address field for things other than an actual address. Now, if you're managing a database, I'm sure you understand why that can become problematic. Not having an actual address means things getting kicked out at the bulk mail rate. If you're using the address for field for anything other than an address when you run an NCOA finder or a CAS certification, you get invalid results because you don't have a valid address. So for existing and living constituents, that's not good, but it's also not helpful when someone is deceased. So typing over an address with the word deceased will prevent you from sending mail to a deceased person, but it also means you have lost the history of where this person lived. So what if you accidentally have duplicate records for them in your system and you mark one deceased and not the other? If the name is something common like John Smith, it's now hard to determine if these are actually duplicates. It just also means you lose a history of things. So I personally want to always keep an address, and rather than typing deceased in the mailbox, in the address box, I want to check the deceased box. Now, I do have a situation with my database here. I'm coming back to RE7, and I'm going to show you my record for Mrs. Martha Washington, which, seeing as how she was the first lady of the U.S., and according to our birth date, she would now be 290 years old. I'm sure we can very easily know that she's deceased for many reasons. But we do not have her deceased box checked, and instead we have deceased in her address lines. Now, if I come to her address tab, unfortunately, I don't have an old address for her. Now, there's an address down here linked to a spouse, but I don't know if that's correct or not. Now, what I can do in this situation, since I'm just looking at Martha specifically, if I come to the database view, there is an audit trail view tile where I can see changes that have been made to her account. So let's go ahead and let's click on just changes, and we've got a change here for her address, and we can actually see what the address was before we typed in deceased. And that 1200 Arlington Avenue is not at all the same thing as what we saw on that spouse address. So we did lose an address in the process. So what we could do is we can manually take this information and we can fix it on her record, because we're able to now see what happened. Now, if this has happened on a global level, again, you may need to come back to the viewer here and do some searching by addresses and potentially do some importing. So if a lot of people have deceased in that address line and the deceased checkbox isn't checked, then you could create a file of these people that have deceased in there. You could re-add the address using an import. You could also import the value to say that the person is deceased. So that gives you an option to be able to fix that. And to be able to work with that data in a different way that you couldn't have as easily before. The other thing that we can do with this is to correct maybe a bad import. So a little bit before I started this demonstration for you, I did an import into the Razor's Edge, and I did make a mistake. So I accidentally made every record in my file coded with the gender of female. And obviously that wasn't correct, and it overwrote some genders that were already in the system. that we didn't want to change, but now I have a hard time finding specifically what records I changed the gender on. Now I can see which records I changed today in query, but that doesn't help me isolate exactly which ones I changed with my import. I could, in Razor's Edge, create a query that looks for anyone that now has the gender of female, but the title maybe of, say, Mr. or something else that's historically linked to the gender of male. But unfortunately, not all titles are going to help me with that. So, for example, on my screen here, Otis Muggleston is a doctor, and being a doctor is not going to tell me a gender. So I'm a little bit at loss here, and I've got a lot of looking to do, and it's going to take me a lot of time. However, with Audit Trail Cloud, just like we searched for those titles earlier, I'm going to come and let's take a quick look at what we can find with our gender changes. So again, we're going to use a change. We're going to keep the date the same. We're going to keep that constituent the same, and we're going to look for all of the changes to gender. So we've got quite a few different things here. Some we did have that said unknown and they were changed to female. So I might need to do a bit more review on those. But then you can see we do have several others here that are showing us they were male and now they're marked as female. We do have some that are relationships as compared to constituents, so that definitely makes a difference. But we could take this, again, same thing as earlier. We can come down to the bottom, we can download the visible, and we can easily change everyone who we changed from male to female back with a Razor's Edge import or with using something like Importacular. So it gives us a great option to fix that import mistake so that we can make Razor's Edge what we need it to be and undo a change that we didn't intend to do at all. I hope that this is helpful for you as you're thinking about how Audit Trail Cloud might allow you to better manage your data beyond just seeing the changes, but being able to take changes that have happened in your database and use those changes to make corrections and to revert things and to go back. So I will pass the microphone back to my colleague, and I hope that we've helped you decide today whether or not Audit Trail Cloud is the right tool for you. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Christine, for those really useful case studies. Hopefully these resonate with you and give you some ideas for ways you can take advantage of all the functionality that Audit Trail Cloud has to offer. So just to recap what we can track, we're tracking changes across all of the fields you'd need to rebuild a record from scratch if it was accidentally deleted without having to do a rollback of data. We've got biographical fields, contact fields, gifts, actions, constituent codes and solicit codes to allow you to bring all of that information back in should you need to. We can see the track changes across the viewer that's available here and drill down into different areas, as well as on the constituent record in NXT on the summary tile and the gift and action tiles. And we can apply those features across our database, giving access to those who need it, but also being able to track changes made by new staff, common errors that have been made, and any changes that have been made across the database that we might not want to see. We can track changes across both NXT and database view, and that includes global changes, changes to code tables, and even imported data as well, no matter what you use to bring the data in. If you'd like more information, then please do get in touch at development@zeidman.info. Thanks very much for listening.